live.
Good morning, ladies, and welcome to Parshas Emor, Tav Shin Pei Aleph, 5781. I have almost all new material for you today, and hopefully this topic is not for the faint of heart, because it's some heavy duty stuff, but it's very relevant and very important for our lives. So we have to, these are things we all have to think about at times, and hopefully we'll address them. This week's Parsha speaks about, first of all, many halachas for Kohanim. We're not going to delve into that too much, but that is part of the Parsha. I always like to review a little bit the Parsha. Then it talks about two types of sacrifices. One is the shlamim, which people would bring on Yantif, and then there's the Toda, which people bring out of appreciation, Korban Toda. Today we bench Gaimel, that replaces the Korban Toda. You know, like the four situations our person crosses through a desert, gets out of jail, or life-threatening illness, all these things, Olena, or overseas, that's not Lo Olena, we should all get to Eretz Yisrael. In all those cases, a person brings a Korban Toda, or today, bench Gaimel, or ask your Rav. There are different alternatives for women, depending on your locale and your Rav's opinion. Then there's a lot about the holidays, this week's Parsha, beginning with Pesach, and then right away, Sefiras is in this week's Parsha, for sure. And then it ends off, the Parsha ends with the person that blasphemed God's name and what was done with him. We do have last year's Parsha still up on YouTube. If you'd like to hear it, it's still there. And that has totally different information, and you get a little bit different spin on Sefiras Omer and on mostly the blasphemer. Today, I decided to, it just Hashem hit me between the eyes with the topic of Kiddush Hashem, like what it means for us. And, like, again, this is a lady's view, not the pure halacha, because I really beg to say that I definitely am no expert on the topic, but from what I could glean from the writings of Rav Shimshon Pincus, we have from Rav Victor Miller, we have from Rav Nissen Alpert, I'll try to quote them as we get to them, and also Rav Mordechai Miller from Gateshead, Zichronim Livracha. Now, so let's start off with this time. We have 5 questions and some amazing information, and I'm sure that this is going to inspire us for growth. Okay, question number 1. It's always relevant. We don't understand always, but there's the connections between, different topics in the Torah is always extremely relevant. Like, for example, in this week's Parsha, we have the Kohanim, and then we have the Korban Toda, the Thanksgiving offering, and then we have Kiddush Hashem, then we have the holidays and Sefiras. Is there a deeper connection between all of these? And we'll probably be answering that at the onset. Then question, so what is the connection? Sometimes there's deep lessons to be learned by connections. Number 2, we're going to explore Kiddush Hashem. It's not widely discussed, but what are its lessons for us? Like, what can we learn? We just think, oh, that's something in the past, the Holocaust, the Crusades, or something, in the future. But what are the lessons for us? Question number 3. The way the whole mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem is worded is very interesting. Okay, so let me just read it to you in this week's Parsha. V'lo sechalalu with shem kodshi. You should not desecrate my name. V'nikdashti b'sof b'nei Yisrael. And I will be sanctified amongst the people of Yisrael, Ani Hashem. I am Hashem Mekadishchem, who sanctifies you. It says you can't desecrate God's name, and then it says in a passive way, I will be sanctified. That's a statement. But from this Vinigdashti, we're taught that you should give your lives up at times for Kiddush Hashem, at times not. We're going to go into all that today, believe it or not. And it says, I'm the one who makes you holy. What's all this connection here? I'm the one who makes you holy. What is that? What's the relevant there? And also, why is it said in the passive? Like, that's so, such a huge mitzvah, and it's said in a passive, it's said just, if it's such a great mitzvah. 2 more questions. How can we perform such a difficult mitzvah? We're going to get into what it means, the ramifications, and how can we do it? And last but not least, we're going to touch upon the Omer. We've done it many times in the past. I wanted to do a new spin, so I have found a few things that I've never said, and we're going to touch upon it a different way today. And with the Omer, the question that I wanted to address, where Victor Miller asked this question, is there are other counting elements that people count. Like, for example, people are supposed to, the Beis Din counts when it's going to be Yovel, when the 50th Jubilee year in Eretz Yisrael, or when it's Shemitah. The Beis Din counts that on behalf of us. We don't sit there and say, this is the first year in Shemitah, this is the second year of Shemitah. Why is it in this particular case, we have to all as a nation count? The only other time a woman counts is, today it's more of like a minhag, it's recommended, but a lot of people don't obligate it by halacha. Women counts for 7 clean days. But that's because purification. Why does the whole Klal Yisrael count this? And another interesting thing, we've mentioned this part before. This is the only line I think I'm going to mention from the whole Omer from previous years, is that Rav Nevinsal says, interesting thing is, Svartam Lachem, you can't be Yotzei. If somebody says today's the whatever day in the Omer, you can't be Yotzei by them counting. Whereas Kiddish, you could be Yotzei almost any bracha. If someone says it on your behalf, you could be Yotzei. But Svartam Lachem means you have to say the bracha for yourself. What does that mean? Okay, those are our questions, ladies. Let's dig in. All you brilliant minds out there that I'm puny in comparison to, but I just happen to sweat over this work and prepare. So you will get the benefit of the preparation. You'll probably have some amazing things, questions and comments. And again, we're just starting back now. Please get everyone to come back. I hope we get everybody back to where they were before, because we love the whole group here. Okay, first presenter that we're going to mention today about how things connect is from the Sefer or Gedalia. This is from Rav Gedalia Shor, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. He was one of the former Rosh Hashivas of Torah V'das, very like a Hasidic type of thought, not totally, because Torah V'das is not totally Hasidic, but it's on the Hasidic vein. But he gives like an explanation I thought we could incorporate about the whole idea of why things are all connected in this week's Parsha. Now, we find that last week's Parsha, by the way, I'm going to add on a little bit here, Kedoshim to you. We were told to be holy. Or Victor Miller says, what does it mean to be holy? It means that a person is supposed to strive for perfection. That is really our mandate during the Omer. We're supposed to strive for perfection. That's what we're here for in this world. And we're supposed to, the purpose of all the Torah mitzvahs is that a person is supposed to go above this world, transcend this world, not let the vicissitudes of life get to someone. Someone is supposed to be above all those type of things. And this Kedusha that Hashem innately gave us, that we're able to take hold of, is what gave us the rights to have Kohanim. Now, Kohanim are established. We wouldn't have Kohanim if we wouldn't have Jews. The Kohen is just said, a Kohen Gadol Me'echav. In this week's Parsha, we're told the phrase, Kohen is greater than his brothers, says Rav Shor. But that doesn't diminish that the Jewish people are meant to be holy. They have the potential within them, and they have the admonition that they have to achieve this. For example, not only is the Kohen greater just because we have Jewish people, but it also says, Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim, the Jews are able to sanctify the holiday. A Beis Din can declare what day is Yom Kippur. Nobody else. They can say when's Rosh Chodesh. And it's because we are Kadosh, because we have a holiness within us that we can, it says, Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. Hashem made the Jewish people holy, therefore we can make the holidays holy. Another expression used, Asher tikru asam b'moadim. You're going to call these, you're calling the names of the Moadim. The Jewish people have such a holiness. Now, we can't take this the wrong way. I have to throw this in. I just think it's a cute interjection here. Years ago, there was on the radio, I used to sometimes listen to talk radio, and there was a scandal that hit Toronto about 10, I would say around 10 years ago, that there was a Hasidic man flying from Newark to Toronto, a Hasidic man, and he was seated next to a woman who probably was immodestly dressed. So he looked at her and he didn't, I think my humble opinion was he didn't know how to speak, English properly. So he said something like change. He looked at the lady, he wanted her to change seats because he didn't want to have that distraction and that temptation of having a woman sit next to him that's not properly dressed. So she made a whole stink of it to the airlines and on the radio and on the news everywhere. She said, you know, look, these Jewish people making such a big deal. They won't sit next to women and blah, blah, blah. And there was a whole back and forth on the radio. By the time, there was no cell phones in those days. By the time I got home, I wanted to call in with my own opinion, but the segment was over. The last thing they said, an Orthodox Jewish woman got online from Toronto, and she said something like, he couldn't sit next to her because we're holy. And the whole place erupted. Nobody knew what that meant. It really wasn't, I don't think she said it quite the right way, because it's a little bit, you know, if you say something like that, like nobody knows what the heck you're talking about. What do you mean you're holy? That is not the reason I would explain to a non-Jew as to why we're not listening. I see somebody's on the bus. I hope you have a nice trip. That they, you know, it's not the reason why, you know, we are, when we say we're holy, it's not the reason why a man cannot sit next to a woman. It's because he's supposed to try to become more holy. We have a potential for holiness, and all of that is trying to, you know, keep himself holy. What he's trying to, I think what she meant to say was that a woman is more than just a piece of meat, and the woman has a neshama, and, you know, to not regard her as a lowly person, that's why we have tznius, and that's why she had to dress up. But when it came out like that we're holy, I don't think anyone online, you know, on the air understood what she was saying. It really like threw me for a loop. I said, this is the Jewish, that's why I wanted to get on. I never comment on radio stations, but at that particular time, I felt like the explanation was very weak, and I felt it had to be explained further. Any case, so that is the reason why it's connected, the Moadim and Kiddush Hashem sandwiched in the middle, and the Kohanim, to show it's the Jewish people that infuse the Kohanim with who they are, and infuse the Moadim with what they are. And it's all from the potential Kedusha that we could grow with. Now, says Rav Gedalia, he says, usually a Jew is supposed to live by the Torah. The Torah is to live by, we're supposed to, you know, we're supposed to, the Torah is like something that's so important to us that we're supposed to live rather than die, to continue keeping the Torah. Any mitzvah is very important, of course, but it's more important, b'chai b'hem, you're supposed to live. But there are 3 averos that a person has to be willing to give his life up for, that lest he, God forbid, commit them. And these 3 sins are adultery, idolatry, and murder. Gilui arayos, avodah zara, and shvichas damim. Now, he says there's a parallel. He says all 3. Why do we have to give up? These 3 transgressions are the source of our life. Like without Torah, without you know, well, anyways, we'll explain that in a minute. He says like these are the 3 sources. They give us life source. We don't have life if we transgress these 3 commandments. These are, if you've gone this far to transgress these 3, then you have gone beyond where a person should go as far as, you know, keeping the Torah the way it should be kept. Now, here's the parallel. He says there's 3, you know, we said in Pirkei Avos, there are 3 foundations to the world: Torah, Avoda, and Gemilas Chasadim. There is Torah, there is prayer or sacrifice in the olden days, but it's a way of giving yourself up to Hashem, and Chesed. Now, these 3 things parallel the 3 averos. Like, says if a person, why do people commit adultery or such type of horrible type of acts like that? Because their head is not in the avenue of holiness at that moment. Their head's not screwed on tight. They're just playing around with life. They don't realize what life is about, and they're just, you know, they don't realize there's any rhyme or reason or rules or things you have to live for or aspire for. So with Torah, that rectifies a person doing such a cardinal sin. Avoda, a person with serving God with prayer, that takes away idolatry, because idolatry is you're serving the wrong source. You're serving usually most idolatry. I've learned from Rosh Hashivas. I remember hearing this from the Peak School Rosh Hashiva, Shlita. He said, like, he quoted someone else. I don't remember at this point who it was, but he said that the difference between idolatry and serving Hashem is that serving idolatry is really self-service. You're serving yourself. You're saying, dear idol, please give me, I want a cottage in the Bahamas. You know what I mean? Give me my villa. Please, idol, give me my whatever it is that I want. You're serving yourself. Avodas Hashem means you're not serving yourself. It means you want to live your life to give some credence, to give some appreciation to your Creator. And Gemilas Chasadim is the third pillar the world stands on. That atones for, that helps. That's the pillar of the world that murder would get rid of. Because Gemilas Chesed is you're trying to be like God and live a selfless life and not think of yourself. And murder is the most heinous ways of thinking of yourself. I don't like this person existing on the planet, so let's knock him off. Like you're really self-serving in those three cases. These also correspond to the three holidays. Shavuos is the holiday of Torah. It's the holiday of where your head is. The head is for wisdom, and wisdom is the most important thing to me, and to live a life with meaning. Pesach is when we got rid of idolatry, with getting rid of the Korban Pesach. We sacrificed the idol of the Egyptians, and that's a service. We're serving Hashem and no longer the Egyptians. And Sukkot, which represents either unity, or I'm adding this little part on because I think it's the same idea, living with not wanting to have, that this world is temporary. When you see it that way, and you see that everything really should be unified togetherness, that's what the sukkah means. That has to do with murder, which would be, like not unity, obviously, and not blacking, and also giving chesed. That's all idea of chesed is sukkahs, is that you don't need much, so then you can live for others. As Sefiras Emor says, in all cases, if a person wants perfection, they want kedusha, they want kedoshim to you. It connects to the holidays, but it's also achieved when we employ willing to give up our lives. What the focus is of our lives, what our lives are here for. Okay, so now we're into some of the heavier stuff for a temporarily moment, but it's really important that we have to go over these because it reminds us what we're here in the world for. I'm going now according to the Shimshon Pincus. This is, I don't know Rambam myself and all these kind of things. I mean, he's quoting the Rambam, but I'm going by our spiritual leader of Shimshon Pincus, Zecher Tzaddik, and to give us some instruction into what is the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. Let's get it clear because it's thrown around all over the place. Let's get it clear so we understand as women what basically is in it for us and how it applies and why there are certain rules. Okay, so there's three aspects of Kiddush Hashem by the Rambam in his Sefer, what's it called? Mishnah Torah. Okay, I think it's Hilchos Yisodei Torah where he brings down the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. So first of all, there are the three cardinal things that are most associated with it. You're supposed to give up your life rather than to commit those three sins. Remember, idolatry, adultery, and murder. Now, the Rambam also adds, whoever does such a thing, like be it in the Holocaust, we shouldn't be tested like this, be it in the Holocaust or be it in the Crusades, whoever does give up his life, the Rambam says he's like Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and Rabbi Akiva, as soon as a person gives up his life like that. But there's a consequence. It says if a person does not give up his life for Kiddush Hashem, then he's machalel, he desecrates this commandment. Now, I want to say one little thing that I heard asked Rabbi Lowy years ago. He said in the Holocaust, for the most part, this was not considered an opportunity of Kiddush Hashem. We'll talk about that later. But, okay, it's only to commit these three at this moment till we go further, okay? These three is Yarog, Va'al Yavor. You're supposed to give up your life rather than to commit those three sins. Now, for a woman, God forbid, being raped is not adultery. It's not adultery. If she goes against her will, she is not transgressed this mitzvah. She doesn't have to give up her life for such a thing. Okay, the second case where you're supposed to give up your life. Okay, wait. There's like three subsections to giving up your life. One is the three sins. Okay, the second time a person is to be willing to give up their life is if somebody is told to commit a sin in front of 10 other Jews. Now, if it's something that's just you and the walls or less than 10 Jews, you're forbidden to give up your life. But if somebody wants you to give up your life in front of 10 Jews, you have to give up your life to transgress any commandment. We'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. And the third thing is when there's shmad, Rabbi Lowy said shmad was not the Holocaust. Shmad is if the purpose of this horrible thing that's going on in the world is to get you to break your religion, like Hanukkah, that was shmad. Not Purim. The Holocaust is more like Purim. They just hated Jews. Didn't matter what your relationship with Judaism was, just hated Jews. But if it's a question of your Judaism, shmad, even on a custom, you're not allowed. You have to be willing to give up your life rather to transgress shmad. Any questions, please feel free to ask them. I understand this is but technical questions, not like going off on tangents. Okay, so let's review that again, just easily. There are really 3 cases of Kiddush Hashem, but we are just doing section 1 now. We're just doing heading 1. Heading 1 is the 3 you have to give up your life for. 1 is for the 3 cardinal sins. Number 2 is if it's in front of 10 other Jews and it's going against your religion. And 3, when it's shmad. Okay, now there are subsections to this, and we're going to discuss the subsections. Okay, the 3 cardinal sins, by the way, Rav Shimshon Pincus says something that's extraordinary, that, these are all new. Some of these things are very new to me, and I felt I have to learn this properly, and we all have to know this basically. Of course, we have to ask Rabbanim. God forbid we shouldn't be tested. But, okay. Now, Rav Shimshon Pincus says there's a concept in halacha called abizrayu. And abizrayu literally means like a branch. It's a Aramaic term. And that means these are equally binding laws, albeit they aren't the main law. You're not punished the same way, but you have to be willing, in this case, to give up your life rather than to commit abizrayu of these. These 3 cardinal sins, anything that smells like it, that smells of these 3 cardinal sins, you have to be willing to give up your life rather than desecrate. Let's give some examples. He says, one thing is, even if you didn't have kavanah to desecrate it, like let's say accidentally you bowed down before a Buddha, that's like an abizrayu, or accidentally you said, I don't believe in God. That doesn't mitigate it. It mitigates it as far as your probably punishment won't be as bad, but you can't do it even accidentally. That is called, you're equally obligated to give up your life for such a thing. Now let's explain what that means. That is, in the 1950s in Israel, there was a big thing swirling around. It was called in Hebrew, Giyus Banos. This is when the government proposed that women should be inducted into the Israeli army. And many poskim, great rabbis of those era, I would say virtually all of them in the Haredi camp, said, Yarog ve'al yavor, that a Jewish woman has to let herself be killed rather than to participate in the Israeli army. In other words, to that degree, they fought the conscription of women in the army, and they felt it was forbidden for a girl that identifies with the Haredi community to go into the Israeli army, because they felt this was a branch of adultery. Like if you're going to have 19-year-old boys or 18-year-old boys and 18-year-old girls in the army, what does that equal? And they're all wearing pants and they're all whatever. What does that come to? Potential, all kinds of fun things that are in the category of similar to adultery. And the rabbis in those days ruled it's forbidden to be conscripted in the army because that's a form, an abizrayu of Gilead Arayas. That's what they said, and that's how we understand it. There's something similar, says Rav Shimshon Pincus, to shvichas damim, to murder. I'm sorry, to avodah zarah, to idolatry. If God forbid somebody is faced, he says, with a terrorist, and the terrorist says, "Are you a Jew?" You are not allowed. You're supposed to give up your life. Rather, you're never allowed to say, "I am not a Jew." You are never allowed to say that. So we look at this Daniel Pearl. God should avenge his blood, was not a religious person. And I don't know, I'm not a Rav, but it seems to me that he died al Kiddush Hashem because he said, I am a Jew, right before he died, now you're allowed, though, it's interesting, you're allowed to say, why do you think I'm a Jew? You're allowed to say that because that's not actual idolatry. It's just saying, why do you think I'm a Jew? That you're allowed to say, but you're never allowed to say, I am not a Jew. Never allowed to say that. Now, you could pretend, you could dress up as a non-Jew, a person in the Holocaust. They did that because, again, the threat was not to commit idolatry. The threat was they wanted to destroy, kill Jews. Then you're allowed to. But if someone's asking you if you believe in the Jewish religion, you're never allowed to say, I don't believe in it. Here's another one that's very famous, that there's an abizrayu of murder. What's the abizrayu of murder? Embarrassing somebody in public. It says, Kol hamal ben pnei chaveiro barabim. Whoever embarrasses somebody in public is as if you killed him. If you killed him. There's a few famous stories on this topic. There's one, Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael Lubachansky, who was the mashgiach of Baranovich Yeshiva in the he was right before the Holocaust. And there was a situation in his town. There was a shul that sometimes he would frequent. They davened, I guess, Vasikin in the morning. And in those days, you had to put coal in the coal oven in order to, warm up the shul. So there was a shamash in that shul who tended to be a bit lazy. And sometimes he relied on the mishulachim that would sleep in the shul. He would assume they would put coal in the fire, logs in the fire, whatever it was that they put in that oven. They would warm up the shul in the morning, and he didn't have to bother, have to get up so early and be cold and everything. So often, when mishulachim or other people, poor stragglers that would be, needed a place to sleep at night, would sleep in the shul, and they'd get the fire going. And then, he'd be appreciative, but he didn't always do it himself. Anyways, one morning, Rabbi Yisrael Yaakov comes early, and he's himself putting things into that stove to warm up the oven. And the shamish, thinking he was another one of these poor beggars that would sleep in the shul, he kicked him in the behind. He gave him a slap on the back or whatever, something like that. Gave him some kind of major slap on the back, that you would do to who you'd think is the lesser than type of person. And Rabbi Yisrael Yaakov was afraid if he would turn around and see who he just hit like that, he would be humiliated. He didn't want to embarrass him. And this was not even in public. He stuck his head more into the oven. And in fact, his beard got singed from that experience, because it's like Tamar and Yehuda. She said, I'm not going to reveal who did this thing with me, and I would rather be burnt than to embarrass somebody. And that's just in private. There was a story that I love about Rebbetzin Kanievsky. She should rest in peace. Once she was walking after davening, she would have a whole slew of women following behind her to get brachas from her on her way home from davening every day. So there was an irreligious Israeli woman from Tel Aviv that went up to the Rebbetzin asking for a bracha for something. And a young man in Bnei Brak stood there, and he witnessed the Rebbetzin talking to such a woman. And he said, you dress like this in Bnei Brak in front of the Rebbetzin? Go home to Tel Aviv. He was indignant that someone should talk to the Rebbetzin dressed in such a way. So the Rebbetzin could not contain herself. She could not contain herself. She said to him, you're makbid on sneas, and you're not makbid on embarrassing a fellow man in public? She said, I never say this, but you're not invited to my home in Bnei Brak ever. She told him this. She says, you're not makbid on murdering somebody? You're not makbid on murder? And they said, she was so beside herself. She interrupted Reb Chaim Kanievsky Shlita Lahavdil in his learning. And she told him, I just witnessed a murder. And she had to take some kind of pill to calm herself down, which she rarely did, but she took usually because of the burdens of other people weighing on her. She had to sometimes take up something to calm her down. This was not her own thing. She felt like she just witnessed a murder, and she couldn't contain herself. They saw another story similar. Rabbi Yisrael Chaim Kaplan, who was a Rosh Yeshiva in Torah B'das. He was supposed to be a very special person. So special, they say his doctor attested to the fact that his heart beat differently during the month of Elul than it beat during the year. Anyways, he also one time was beside himself, crying and all upset. And someone asked, the menahel of his yeshiva said, Rebbe, please tell me what's wrong. Should I get an ambulance? You're distraught. And he said, I'll tell you, but please don't tell anybody. I just saw one bacher insult another bacher in public. He said he embarrassed him and humiliated him in public. It's like witnessing a murder. I can't live with myself. I just witnessed a murder. I'm beside myself. This is supposed to be our attitude. It's an abizrayu of shrichas damim. We are supposed to not allow ourselves to what's it called, to witness such a thing and not be affected. Just read to you what Rav Shimshon Pincus says here.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can you repeat again? What is the English translation for abisrayu?
A branch.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay,
it says in
thank you.
Gemara Sota, this is just the source. It says, it should be easier for a person to throw himself into a fire. Even though we don't find that in halacha, but this is in Yareg Val Yavor. Okay. This is like, you're not supposed to allow yourself to hear such a thing. You're not allowed to embarrass. That's how far we have to stretch ourselves, not to embarrass somebody in public or not to be present. I remember in Toronto many years ago, there was someone who came to speak, a lady came to speak to Toronto, and she said the word, in the middle of her speech, she said the word schwarza, which is only means in Yiddish, black person, but some people consider it derogatory. She said that word. There was someone in the audience who happened to be married to a black convert, and like she got all upset and offended, and 3 women walked out of the shiur besides the woman that was married to the black convert, because those 3 women wanted to show they didn't want her to be embarrassed, and they were like siding with it, which was a beautiful thing that they showed. Now, so that's so one one thing about these 3 is that we said that if you have to put like that's like a Roman numeral 1 about the 3 cardinal sins you have to be willing to kill yourself for. The underheading, the subheading, which would be A, I guess, and there's only an A, is even an abizrayu of these 3 things you have to be willing to give yourself up for. Okay, now, second heading that a person, we said, has to, the second thing is the 3 sins, and you have to, under the 3, the main thing would be you have to kill yourself, and it's the 3 cardinal sins, and even if it's an abizrayu, you have to kill yourself for those 3 cardinal sins. Now, section B under this heading of Yarog Val Yavar, kill yourself rather than to transgress, would be if you're in front of 10 people, we said, in private, it's forbidden. You're not allowed to ever give up your life. But if somebody, this would be like we said, if there's 10 people and you're told publicly to transgress. Now, this does not mean, says Rav Pincus, does not mean not to do something. Like if he said, if somebody would threaten you, don't put on tefillin in front of 10 people, you are allowed to give in to him. He said, there are years that Jews had to live without mitzvahs. That's what he said. Bring halacha, like I'm not a Rav, I'm quoting him, not me. He said, if it's to not do a positive commandment, then you don't have to listen because it doesn't show like you gave into pressure. It's just, you're not doing it. But if it's to do a negative, like to eat pig in front of 10 people, then you have to give up, you have to give up your life for such a thing. Now, Shmad, in time of people saying that they're destroying Jews who want to believe in Judaism, this is like the Crusades and maybe the Spanish Inquisition, all these type of things, even if they tell you to change your custom, you have to not give in and give up your life because they're doing it to fly in the face of your religion. Apparently, says Rav Pincus, like by now, it's probably 250 years ago, in Poland, there was a big machlokas, a big argument. There were Rabbanim who, there was an incident where the people that were in the reform movement were influencing government, and they convinced them that every Jew should shave off his beard and pay us. This is a whole challenge that Polish Jewry had over 250 years ago. So the Rabbanim were split, believe it or not, on this psak. Some Rabbanim said, no, the government is only issuing this decree because it's a question of wanting people to be modernized, not a question of religion. So the Rabbanim said, no, you should, just shave your beard and be quiet. And there were other Rabbanim. These were a split between Gedolim, not a split between, the more modern and the less modern. These were a split between big Rabbanim. He doesn't mention who or what. And he said there were other Rabbanim that felt, no, this is a question of, it's really underneath this all is an anti-Semitic act to try to get rid of Judaism. And they felt, and no matter what, you should not shave off your beard. That's an interesting point, but it's just showing us in what cases we have to keep Kiddush Hashem. And that's the lo sachalu shame. You're not allowed to kill, you have to become holy. And these are the cases where a person has to give up their life. Can a person be machmir? Now, I don't think any one of us, I'm surprised somebody even asked this, but to Rav Pincus, but he said you have to ask your Rav. But the basic idea is that, that he said, that the basic idea is it's in your mind, anything that takes you away from religion. And that's the question people are asking. Now, that's the first heading of when a person has to. There's also an idea of Kiddush Hashem, of the idea of Chil Hashem, rather, of when it's called the Chil Hashem. You don't have to give up your life, but things you're not allowed to transgress because it's like a Chil Hashem. And that goes according to your level. Like a big tzaddik, it says in the Gemara, Rava said, if he didn't pay his bills on time, if he paid it on credit, for him, it's a Chil Hashem. Now that's an Amora. That's not our generation at all. But this is like for the greatest rabbi of the generation, he has to look perfect. His clothes have to look perfect. Everything about him, there was a story even about the Chafetz Chaim one time. He came late to davening, and I think it was because he was engaging in a mitzvah. He got up and told the whole shul why he came late. So they shouldn't think that that's just like because he felt the responsibility to have to say that. We, according to our level as religious people, we have an obligation of Chil Hashem. Like, for example, I don't think a Jew should engage in road rage. Like, when we do it, we look like everybody else. Like, we should be so boiling angry that the car cut us off or whatever. Like, enough. Like, certain things a Jew shouldn't look like, we just have to know what would be beneath our dignity. Rav Pam Zatzal tells us that Baalei Tshuva have a great opportunity in making a Kiddush Hashem, or God forbid, doing a Chil Hashem, the way they react to their religious parents. There was once a book many years ago, which I will not mention the title. I was infuriated when I got that book. I got rid of it. It was published by a Frum publisher, and it was a mother of a Baalei Tshuva. And in the book, just, off aside, how she wasn't included at all in her daughter's wedding, and how she had nothing to do with anything in the future, and everything was done by I was infuriated because I felt it gave an impression that, they look down on the rest of the world and they're not honoring their parents, and that's terrible. Every time a Baalei Tshuva honors his parents, he's also doing Kiddush Hashem. It's not just honoring parents. It's a question of Kiddush or Chil Hashem. Okay, and then the third category of Kiddush Hashem, it's not killing, it's not letting yourself be killed. It's not a question of according to your level, but there's mitzvahs. When you do something, a mitzvah, just to show I'm doing it for Hashem. I have no pleasure in this mitzvah. I'm just doing it because Hashem wants me to. Or God forbid the opposite, if somebody does an Aveira, not because of any pleasure, but because I just don't want to do this mitzvah or do this Aveira, that's a Chil Hashem. The Chafetz Chaim considers that it could be a potential in some comments of Lashon Hara that people make. It could be under the category of Chil Hashem, because sometimes people get no personal pleasure speaking Lashon Hara. Sometimes we do. It's Nakama against somebody. I mean, that's Nakama. Then you're over Nakama. You're not over Chil Hashem, but you've been taking revenge. But if a person is what's it called? If a person is just doing it and there's just shooting the breeze, saying some Lashon Hara, it could be doing a Chil Hashem because you're getting no personal pleasure out of this. You're just doing it to hurt other people. I hope you're all with me. I hope everybody's with me and hearing this and getting it. And I hope I'm not going too fast. Please, if you need to clarify anything, please ask me. Okay, now we're getting a little bit simpler. So those are the basic ideas of what Chil Hashem is, and that's the categories of Chil Hashem. Rabbeinu Yonah tells us, who's also an early commentary, so he's like on the level of Rashi and Rambam. He says Kiddush Hashem, if you do a Kiddush Hashem in your life, we know Kiddush Hashem, by the way. Okay, good. Thank you for telling me, Chana Tavor. Thank you for telling me you got it. I appreciate that. what's it called? So what's it called? So Kiddush Hashem, we said Chil Hashem, Yom Kippur doesn't forgive you for a person until they die. They're not forgiven. For tshuva doesn't help you with Chil Hashem. Only death atones. But one way to atone, says Rabbeinu Yonah, for Chil Hashem is making a Kiddush Hashem in your behavior. What is the main thing Kiddush Hashem? Reb Dessler tells us it's your thoughts. He said when the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, came and they destroyed the yeshiva of Kelm, the bastion of holiness. It was a small yeshiva, but it produced the greatest rabbis that we have from today. Everything emanates from Kelm. In the yeshiva world, in the Litvish world, everything we have today is from Kelm. And when they were the whole yeshiva was slaughtered. When they were murdered, they started to dance. And they started to say, we have an opportunity to dial Kiddush Hashem. That was giving a great, because it's in your thoughts what you're thinking at that time. You know, what are you thinking? That I'm willing to give Hashem everything back that he gave me. Hashem gave me everything I own. He gave me my very soul. So I'm just giving it back to my creator who deserves to have it returned to him. That was their thoughts. We can do the same thing. There's ways of making Kiddush Hashem. When you say Yehei Shmei Rabbah, that's why particularly a mourner's Kaddish, person has a loss. There's no mention of death in Kaddish. Kaddish is just saying, whatever he wants, let his name be sanctified forever and ever. No matter that I've lost something, I am saying, Hashem, I'm accepting your decree, and may what you want from me, may that be sanctified forever and ever. That was the attitude of wanting God's name to be preserved and lauded, no matter what goes on in my personal life. Tefillah is also under this category of opportunities to make a Kiddush Hashem. It says, La'avdo b'chol levavchem u'b'chol nafshechem. Person wants to serve Hashem with their whole soul. What does that mean? Even when we say Shema, here's your chance to prepare yourself for a Kiddush Hashem, is to say, we love Hashem b'chol nafshecha, with all of our soul. It means we're willing to, that means you're saying, if right now, God forbid, you would take my soul from me, I am going to give it with my whole heart. I'm going to love you that you're doing that to me. And this is how you can, in a mini way, in Abis Rayu, if you want to call it, you're making Kiddush Hashem every time you say this with proper kavana. He brings down Rav Shimshon Pincus. I'm still bringing Rav Shimshon Pincus, basically. Whenever I'm saying something else, I've been inserting it. Rav Shimshon Pincus brings down a pasuk into Tehillim, Kapitel Pei. It says, Ure'ei im derech otzev bi, unecheni b'derech olam. David HaMelech says, and see if there's something that I'm upset about, and you should take me on your path forever. The Eben Ezra says these words, which are haunting. What was David HaMelech saying in this Tehillim? Shows how high he was compared to us. Im yesh b'libi rega achad b'machshava. If I have in my heart 1 minute in my thoughts. Oh no, I didn't spell something right. Oh, machshava bit. I left out a letter. 1 second. Second, let me check this properly. I thought I copied it down, but I wasn't. Okay. If ever I'm thinking about your thoughts, your Torah, and there's one moment, she'ena kahogen, and it's not proper, shalot titav beinechas, if I'm thinking 1 minute, something that won't be approved in your eyes, Hashem, hamiseini miyad, unecheni b'derech olam, take me away forever if I won't think in reim derech otzev bi. If you see something that I'm complaining about your Torah, I'm upset with your Torah, I don't appreciate what you've given me, this is how you should, David HaMelech felt he shouldn't live unless he's every minute being Mekadesh Shem Shemayim and his thoughts. Now this is something like, wait, think about it. The idea of a korban, coming close to Hashem, says Rav Shimshon Pincus. Like it's Mesiras Nefesh. We're supposed to see the animal, and it's supposed to be as if we were giving ourselves up to Hashem. He says when we say the tefillah Elokai Neshama in the morning. Second, let me just. We say Elokai, my God, you're my God. All my hands, I want to, I don't want to, I don't want to do anything wrong, but your neshama is pure. The rest of me, I don't know, but your neshama is pure. The source of me is pure. You created it in the Olam Habriya. Yitzarta, you put it in the world of Yetzira. You fashioned it even more specifically, and it's considered holy until it got into my body. You keep it. And why should I keep it in my body? Because it's so holy and the body is so dirty that they really wouldn't. Hashem holds it within us because really our neshama is very pure. We have such potential, but ata asidli lami man, you're going to eventually take it away. It says, I'm willing. Those words, the kadmonim say, you're supposed to be willing. Another place in davening, you're willing to give up your life because you've been holding this in me. I hope I've kept it properly, and I'm eventually going to be giving it back to you. That's what it says in Elokai Neshama. Now, so far what we said sounds really a little too much for our generation, especially with all we think of the way we live and what we live for and how lofty this is from us. But how can we achieve it? How can we get somewhere there? Because it's a commandment upon every Jew. First of all, Kedoshim to you, last week's Parsha. And we have this week's Parsha of, there is a commandment. It's one of the 613. We can't say that one, just throw that one out. We're not going to think about that one. We have to think about that one. Rishraika Feivel Mendelovitz, the Cardinal once said, if you don't look up at the stars, you're going to fall in the mud. We have to aspire to something and slowly incorporate it into our being. So God does not want us to accomplish it. We're not Rabbi Akiva. In case any of you didn't notice, I don't think I could safely say that nobody in this class is Rabbi Akiva, but we can say we want to aspire to be like Rabbi Akiva. We have to slowly work at it. And if we achieve even something, then we're Kedoshim. We're Kedoshim. We're people that are making our lives, we're sanctifying our lives. So we have these opportunities by saying Elokai Neshama every day. We have these opportunities by saying V'ahavta in Shema every day. Those are opportunities where we can at least have in mind that I would be willing to fulfill such things in my life. Now, how can we do it? Rav Mordechai Miller, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, gives us some instruction. Okay. He says that in the Gemara Nida, we're told that when a child is in the womb, he's taught the entire Torah. And then when he's born, the Malach pinches him right under his nose and he forgets the whole Torah. Why go through this whole arduous process? Why should a person know something and then forget it? He says the reason for this is to teach us that inherently all of us are really attracted to Hashem like a magnet. Our soul really inherently is pure. We really have all this Torah under our belts. We really are at that place, but we've dirtied ourselves up with all kinds of things that we've engaged in during our lifetimes. So he says that's why it's written in the passive tense, v'nikdashti. I should become holy, Hashem says about himself. Not that you should make me holy, but I should become. Why? Because he says it's really a natural instinct inside of us, way deep down. But it's a natural order of things because you're not, how can you be commanded to love Hashem? It's a mitzvah in the Torah, but how can you be commanded to love Hashem? You're not. It's really your natural instinct. It's like a magnetic connection, but it's the stuff that gets in the way. That's why the Meforshim, when they explain what it means to love Hashem, they say that Hashem's name should be beloved through you. You can't command someone to love, but that our actions can reignite that deep love that's burning within us. This basically what Mordechai Miller says, I saw this by Rav Simcha Zissel from Count. I think he's mostly saying Rav Simcha Zissel more or less, that saying the same idea. Now, so we're drawn to Hashem. It's really an inborn, there's a certain cycle in life. Hashem gives us an inborn gift, and then he conceals himself. Then we make effort, and then we bring Kedusha. That's a human cycle of life that we're supposed to engage in. That really Hashem gave it to us initially. It's there, it's in our kishkas. We have to, through effort, through actions, through doing mitzvahs, through making Hashem's name beloved, it's aroused within ourselves. We get Kedusha, and it's all through effort of doing positive things that we can get rid of that negative filth that's clouding us up by doing Like Rabbeinu Yonah says, could do Kiddush Hashem, you could take away the Chil Hashem. Rav Tzadok HaKayin tells us, like, as far as the Omer is concerned, Shabbos is unchanging. When we talk about, we're commanded to the Omer, it says, Mimachras HaShabbos, the day after Shabbos, count 50 days. Why doesn't it call a spade and say we count the Omer from after Pesach? Why don't we say Pesach? Why do we say Shabbos? And the Sadducees made a whole mistake here, and they said they only count the Omer from Shabbos. Why? So we say we count the Omer the day after Pesach. Why is it called Shabbos? Shabbos means a day of unchanging Kedusha. It's going to be holy whether people keep it or not, because God made it holy when he stopped the world, so to speak. So too, God gave us a real awakening on Pesach night. He took us all out of Mitzrayim. He showed us his love. We got Kedusha, but then he hid himself. Right after we left Mitzrayim, a miracle to leave Mitzrayim. We all felt the miracle. The next day, it's all concealed again. And then we had 49 days to work on ourselves. 49 days where we're supposed to uncover the holiness, where we're supposed to, through actions and thoughts when we daven, to have the right kavanas, when we say V'ahavta, when we say Elokai Neshama. And then we take that, and Pesach means to leap, to pass over, to jump. It was a big jump, a big start from where we were the day before Pesach. The day before Pesach, we were nowhere. We actually, when people were, not sinning, they weren't engaged in the right thoughts. Pesach was a big arousal. And then after that, we had to come to it on our own efforts. But of course, we don't count 50. It says 50 days, but we don't count the day 50. Why? Because that's, again, a gift from Hashem, Shavuos. Once we reveal some things, we work on ourselves, we get the present of Hashem taking us above our level. Renussin Alpert, so Cardinal says that there's no command here. It says v'nigdashti, because we're doing all the mitzvahs. It becomes a natural extension. It becomes that. That's why Rabbi Akiva said about himself, when his students were incredulous, they saw him being destroyed by the Romans. They started murdering him in such a savage way. And Rabbi Akiva was saying Shema. And he said, all my life, I worried about these words, that I should love Hashem with all my soul. Why did it happen, says Rav Nissen Alpert? Because he worked on it his whole life. He kept saying, when will I come to this? He wanted to get to that level of finally being able to say, Hashem, I owe you. Why is this come after the Korban Toda in the Parsha? It comes after the Korban Toda because the Korban Toda, if we have proper appreciation for all that God has given us, including our very lives, we should naturally, by extension, want to give him everything back. It should come from Hakaras HaTov, says the Lekach Tov, that we want to give everything back. Rav Victor Miller tells us, and I'm finishing within 5 minutes, Rav Victor Miller tells us that Omer is really instructive to our entire life. It says, Limnois Yameinu Kain Haida. We want to count our days, make our days count. But Kain means to justify our days. They should be justifiable. For what should we count our days? So Rav Victor Miller says our days have to matter in general. What does it say? Yiras Hashem hi chachma. It says there's only one thing that's wisdom, is the fear of Hashem. That's what our whole day is, our whole lives are based for. That's Hakaras HaTov, to fear Hashem. What does fear of Hashem mean? Yira is from the word ra'ah, to see. Ignorance is bliss. You don't want to see. We don't want Hashem. We don't want to owe him anything. We don't want to hide out sometimes, not to see him. But the purpose of life, says Rav Victor Miller, is awareness of Hashem. That's what we're supposed to work on during the Omer. That's what we're supposed to work on during our lives. And the mitzvahs help us accomplish all these. He says something beautiful. He says, when we talk about days, counting days, he says the luminaries were created on the 5th day of creation to divide, hi Florence, divide between day and night. Where the luminators are there to divide between day and night. Now, why do we have this big sun in the sky every morning dividing, making days and nights? Why? There's many reasons. If we would not have days and nights, says Rav Victor Miller, everything would be one long blur. And we wouldn't feel like life is passing us by. We wouldn't feel this in directive that we have to accomplish something with our lives, that we have to do something with our life. We would just, we just think, look, there's plenty of time. I don't know, till life ends. But day and night reminds us another day, another period, another time we have to make something of ourselves. Time is going by. Also to appreciate more. He says every night, a person had a horrible day. When you go to sleep at night, he says Hashem has the best surgeons working on your body overnight. So when you get up in the morning, you're a different person. He said, that's though if you go to bed on time. If you don't go to bed on time, then you're responsible. But he said, but if you try human effort, your best to go to bed on time, Hashem is fixing you up in the middle of the night. And it reminds you that time is important. Time should be appreciated. And time is irrelevant. Robbing time is worse than robbing money, stealing time. Our time is here, you know. He said, Rav Simcha Zissel says, a person, if a surgeon would take care of us overnight, we would write a big check, or Victor Miller says, not Rav Simcha Zissel, sorry. Victor Miller says, really, we would write a big check to the surgeon who saved their life every morning. You know, he said, you know, like, okay, just put through surgery, it feels so much better. Why don't we have that same gefill when we say the Maidani in the morning, to say that Hashem, look what I owe you, I've had so much appreciation. So, you know, we have to make our days count. I saw in the Ated, I'm almost ending, believe me, I have like a few minutes. But in the Ated, we're told, Rav Yitzchak Schwartz writes a column, and he says, he saw a sign on the highway in New York, it said, make your days count. So he thought it was a Jew, you know, during Sefiras, he thought, you know, there was some Jew like saying that, you know, remember to count Sefiras. But he looked carefully, it was an ad for Jack Daniel, which is a whiskey company. So he meant when you're going to drink that whiskey, make it count. Like, look what people are putting their stress on. Like, what are people stressing? Make your days count. Like, you know, get a good slice of meat, get a good drink of Jack Daniels. But we as Jews are supposed to look differently. Make those days count. And don't be distracted. Remember that we're here to try to appreciate, to try to make our lives culminated in making a Kiddush Hashem in the world, and not making a Chil Hashem in the world. And no matter what job we engage in, let's say a woman, she's providing meals. When we serve somebody, and even if they're being lazy, they're not helping us, or Yontif, you feel like you're a servant, you're serving and serving and serving. We should remember, Naisei lechem lechol basar kili olam chastai. We're emulating Hashem. We're giving food to other people. Anything we do, we can turn into a Kiddush Hashem by just thinking the right thoughts when we do those actions. I saw something incredible in the Mesilas Yesharim by Rav Victor Miller. He brings down something I've read for years, and I never understood what it meant. I always thought it was extreme. It talks about if a person's a lates, a person's a scoffer, it says it's kashemen magen hamashuach b'shemen. If a person like scorns or mocks or scoffs at something, it's like wearing a shield that has oil on it. Like it's like you're trying to penetrate your life with something meaningful. When you hear people scoff, it takes away that appreciation. Rav Victor Miller says this applies to the entertainment that people are involved with today. Major entertainment. People think life is just to shoot the breeze. Now, I think we need entertainment at times. We have to, especially when things are too getting to us too much, we have to let go. But we have to watch for that, because if a person is too much distracted and forgetting what life is about, and that our ultimate goal is to try to make our lives full of Kedusha and to have meaning in our lives and purpose in our lives, and to try to give back to Hashem everything he gives to us in all the Yomim Tovim, we are ruining it. Rav Yerucham Lubavitch once said, Chilul means when you're machalel something, when you desecrate something, it means you think everything's equal. Chilul Shabbos means you think Shabbos is equal to a weekday. Kavod, on the other hand, means you think something has a positive, something extra. So he says that it shows importance of things. If we see life as not just to shoot the breeze, but life has importance. Every minute we can acquire more mitzvahs, more holiness. We can do things for our fellow man. We can do more chesed. We can daven with more meaningful davening. And if there's someone listening, we can show more hakaras hatov, more appreciation. All these things, then we're really doing Kiddush Hashem, that we're raising Hashem up in the world. We're making Hashem's name great. We're achieving our purpose in life. We're not letting entertainment get in our way. And we're really giving kavod to Hashem. I'm just going to end this off with a beautiful story I happened to also see in the Ated, also by Rav Yitzchak Schwartz, but this story should conclude our whole meaningful message. There was a Heilige Rebbe living in World War II by the name of the Kloisenberger Rebbe. The Kloisenberger was known give chizuk, to really give people encouragement. All the people living in the Holocaust, all the people knew he was a person you could depend on. In fact, they said he never cried the entire World War II. He never shaved his beard. Somehow he got away with everything. And it wasn't even obligatory. He never ate treif. He had oil for his menorah. He had matzahs for Pesach. Now, we're not talking about he had a store going. I'm sure it was like barely Mesiras Nefesh, but he was able, even had a fruit on Tu B'Shvat. Somehow he prepared fruit. Like he kept every single mitzvah in the Holocaust. They say the only time he cried was when the Holocaust ended and he saw Mashiach wasn't here. But in any case, he survived the war and he gave chizuk to thousands of people. He went to America and he went to start collecting funds. He went to a famous Gvir that lived during, the DP camps also. Yeah, and the DP camp is when, right, you're right. Thank you for telling me exactly, right? And the DP camp is when he cried for the first time, when he saw that he didn't bring Mashiach. Thank you, Devorah. Any case, so the Rebbe, when he left the war, he was emaciated. He looked gaunt. He was like he lost his wife and his whole family during the war. I forgot to mention that as well. He comes. He tells this Gvir, Reb Sam Feuerstein, who is, I believe, in the Midwest he lived, and he did a lot for Torah Masorah. He did a lot for a lot of Jewish causes. He did a lot for Torah. He approaches this Sam Feuerstein and he tells him, I want to build yeshivas. I want to build shuls. I want to build Torah, and I want to even make a hospital. You know, the Sanzer Laniado Hospital in Eretz Yisrael is from the Klausenberger Rebbe. Anyways, so he said he wanted to build all these institutions, and he's looking at him, this man that looks like he's starved. He's emaciated, and he's saying he wants to build all these things, and he wants Mr. Feuerstein's help to build all these things. So he looks at him and he tells him, Rebbe, I'll try. He said, he agreed. He's going to help him. I'll try. So Klausenberger Rebbe looks at him and he says, you know, I had a different meaning to I'll try before World War II and after World War II. Before World War II, when I wanted to go somewhere, I'd walk in the street for 1 minute and somebody would give me a ride. Before World War II, if I had to carry anything, people would help me carry something. In World War II, I had to walk carrying a heavy 50-pound stone with me in the hot sun, wherever I had to go, and still I kept the Torah. I had to do all these inhuman type of acts, above human, superhuman activities with all my strength, but I had no power left. And then I tried. And then he looked at Mr. Feuerstein and he understood the musser there, that I'll try means, you know, if I'm saying I'm trying, you have to try the way I'm trying, you know? So let's try to model ourselves after the Klausenberger Rebbe. Let's make our days count. Let's be holy people, not like the lady on the radio station, but let's be holy people in all the senses that Rav Shimshon Pincus meant it, that we should try to not desecrate, God forbid, in any way, these parts of the Torah. Think when we say V'ahavta every morning. Think when we say Elokai Neshama every day. Try to make our lives a holy existence. I thank you for listening. Thank Rivka Shavshav for being the amazing woman she is. And Mitzvah Hashem, we will see you next week. Same time, hopefully not same place. We should all be in Yerushalayim Kiddish. Thank you very much. Sei gesund.
Beautiful.